guys are going to play the World Cup, the Homeless World Cup in Wales. No good for us.
Anyasona nichivhara hameno tichikunana. Torega 1 shetu vatambidzi. Let's see more.
Yeah, tops and shorts and socks. And socks as well. Yeah. So this is it really. So guys, come home.
I'll be backing up with prayer.
Yeah.
No one must be injured.
Yeah.
And you must not lose this tournament. Yeah.
My name is Marshal Gore. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Team Zimbabwe UK, a diaspora sporting organization that is focusing on harnessing Zimbabwean sporting talent that is hidden in the diaspora. I have a background in sport. I also played football at semi-professional level and professional level when I left school here in Zimbabwe. I played for Cranbourne Bullets as a goalkeeper, and then I left for the UK where I went on to play for some professional, semi-professional clubs. After retiring from football, I saw it befitting to contribute towards the development of football in Zimbabwe by forming an organization which is called Team Zimbabwe UK, which we formed together with other diasporans in 2012 when we hosted first the Zimbabwe Olympic team and the Zimbabwe Paralympic team that participated in the London 2012 Olympics. Since then, we have made a lot of progress in supporting our national team by talking and persuading to the diaspora-born players and players that were raised in the diaspora to come and play for the national team. We were instrumental as an organization in supporting Tendai Darikwa, Alec Mudimu, Adam Chickenson, Kundai Benyu, Admiral Musekwi to come and play for Zimbabwe. In 2017, we brought them here, 5 of them, to play 2 crucial friendlies against Lesotho and Namibia. Since then, the Diaspora Brigade has taken off, and our national team has tremendously benefited from this initiative and leading to the team qualifying for Egypt 2019. So we are so delighted and grateful of this achievement as an organization, and we also want to thank everyone who's been supporting us with this initiative, which has led us again this year to come on a tour, on a footballing tour, with a largely under-23 side that came from the UK, Australia, and America. We had players across 3 continents that came and participated in this tour, where we played 4 games against Premier League sides and against an Academy Select and against also a Division 2 side. It has been an eye-opener for the boys, and this tour was also organized in collaboration with the Zimbabwe UK Embassy, in collaboration with the ZTA, Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, and the Ministry of Tourism. And we are delighted that when we arrived here, we were given a very good reception with the Ministry of Sports, Sports and Recreation Commission, and also ZIFA played a critical role in supporting our program. And the PSL, which is the Premier League of Zimbabwe, they were also very supportive in supporting us to have the necessary fixtures that we wanted. So the tour was very successful. The idea of bringing the Zimbabwe Diaspora National Team on a tour, I think, came as part and parcel of our developmental program. I think I wrote a document in 2014 which I shared with the key stakeholders of football here, called the Zimbabwe Diaspora Football Development Strategy. And with that, within that document, it clearly documented the pathway of progress for national teams that have made it to the World Cup by harnessing their diaspora talents. And we researched thoroughly and well the programs of development of football using the diaspora. And we thought that it was an important idea for us to bring this national team here so that we can showcase our hidden talent in front of our coaches, so that they can have access or disposal to our hidden talent collectively together, and they can make a decision who they want to include in the teams. Listen, as a Zimbabwean, I feel it's important that we promote our country by using the diaspora. And I actually think that through migration, we've had a lot of people that have been exposed to professional standards of football. And I felt that it's important for my country to not to miss out from this extravaganza. So I felt it befitting that our pro and semi-pro players should have an opportunity to come and play for our national team. After all, they're exposed to high standards of football, training methods that are class. So I felt it was important as a passionate Zimbabwean who want to promote his country that we should tap into these players, mobilize them, organize them into an entity and go home and showcase them to the country. And I'm glad that we managed to do that. Yes, we faced a lot of challenges. We did not have support from the corporates since we are starting. But again, we managed to self-fund and ensure that the trip took place. So I'm delighted that we made the trip despite of the challenges and that we faced, but everything went very well, and I'm so glad that our next trip will be even much bigger and better. I think when you compare the foreign best players and the local best players, you can safely say that the local best players are very physically, very fit, but technically they are limited because obviously of the coaching methods and because obviously of the unavailability of resources. So the players that come from abroad are technically quite gifted and they are methodical and tactical, so they understand and read the game much better. Where here most players were exposed or they are brought up in an environment of playing football at a social level. We play football to enjoy, but the professional players, I think, are much more focused and competent in their approach to the game. And they also have a very good understanding of diet and knowing exactly what to do when they have the ball. I think to some extent I can say it's predictable, but I was also impressed by some of the games that I watched. I think we played against Chapungu in Gweru, and I was quite impressed by their tactical approach. I also watched several Premier League games when we were on the tour. I watched Caps play Harare City at the National Sports Stadium. I think both teams were tactically very competent. The game was exciting with a lot of pace in it and intensity. So I actually think the standard of football is getting better, and maybe caters to a lot of the academies that have flourished across the city, here in Harare and in Blawa and across the country. So I think our football standard is improving. So definitely the standard is improving. In order for Zimbabwe to make it in the World Cup, I think we need to have a firm approach on tapping all our talent, our best talent that is in the diaspora, and continue to develop our local talent and blend the two. I think if we do that effectively with a very clear strategy, I think we'll be able to play in the World Cup. Yes, we have a shortage of resources, but I don't think necessarily that will prohibit us from playing in the World Cup. But I actually think that if we are more organized and we have a clear plan and strategy of developing our players, I think we can make it to the World Cup even with limited resources. I think the advantage that Zimbabwe has lately is that there's been a flourishing of academies that have been set up here in Zimbabwe. I think when you compare regionally with maybe Mozambique, Zambia, and Malawi, in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of football academies set up here in Zimbabwe. And also the other thing that we will help to develop our football is that we have a vast amount of people in the diaspora and a lot of players now that are playing at semi-professional and professional level. If we tap into them strategically and blend them into our national development program, I think they will help us to make a lot of progress at international level. I think the government are trying their best to support the development of sports under the circumstances. And I think football has had a fair chance of resources from the government, but our sporting budget is very limited. But I think things could be improved. It could be better with more attention. I think we need more money into sport. Personally, I actually think we need to set up a sport development fund, which the Minister of Sports should initiate and invite all the corporates to come and get involved into it. I think the money that develops football, if you're comparing with Western countries, most of the money that develops football comes from the private sector. And I think we need to adopt such models, commercial models, where we entice the private sector to be involved in football. The benefits of investing in football are that football globally now is one of the biggest industries. So I think if it's well managed and resourced, I think it can generate income, and I think it has got a huge following. Football is by largely the biggest sport on this planet. So there is a lot of plus for investing into football. Clubs can invest, can grow, develop a fan base, so it supports the economy. Football has now become trend, and I think there are a lot of opportunities in football. The benefits that corporates can get from football is access to a wide, diverse clientele group or audience that is actively. Normally, football is supported by people that are largely in their in their teens. So football is normally followed up by people that are actively involved in the economy. So as a result of that, connecting with such a fan base creates a lot of opportunities for corporates. So I think that there's a lot of incentive with regards to corporate support to the sport, because it's a sport of the people that are actively involved. Football fans spend. They spend money on replicas. Football fans drink. Football fans like to be entertained. So I actually think that these are very good attributes for corporate sponsors to sponsor football. I think when you compare government participation in football with perhaps maybe what we see in the UK and what we see here in Zimbabwe, you can actually see that there's a huge gap in terms of resource allocation. I think governments in the West, like for UK example, the FA are well resourced with public funds, but here, organizations like ZIFA, they are not well resourced with public funds. But again, when you look at look at the pros and the cons, you may also see that there are shortcomings from an administrative point of view, which also inhibits capital from following, because capital follows where order is. I've had a chance to talk to the Minister of Sports and the person who's in charge of sports development. I think they are on a good course with regards to developing or encouraging young people to be involved in sports. The government is planning on increasing its capacity of sports centers or sports resource centers across the country. Currently, they are operating with about 5,000 sports centers, but they told me that in total, Zimbabwe needs up to almost 55,000 sporting centers or social or leisure sporting clubs. So I think there's a huge gap, but the Ministry of Sports are fully aware and are making the necessary initiative to ensure that they expand the capacity of integrating sport with communities. That's a very good question. I actually think that we have good coaches here, but I think there's room for improvement. I've watched a few clubs play, and you can tell that there is still a lot of gaps or deficiencies in the coaching methods. But I actually think that the country needs to embrace modern or nuanced approach of coaching. Football has evolved as the world has evolved also. So some of the old methods don't actually work now. So I actually think that we need a lot of partnership programs with clubs that are abroad in Europe or in South America to ensure that our coaches are exposed to exchange programs that will help them to understand and master the new approaches that are involved in the game of football. So there is a lot of improvement that is required. But that's not to say regionally we have bad coaches. I think regionally we have actually produced some very good coaches that have gone to win championships in other countries. I'm not aware if we have schools for coaches in Zimbabwe, but I actually think that that's an area that needs development. And I think it's a critical area that needs development. A school of coaching would be necessary to develop the quality of coaches that we want. So it's certainly a development objective that I would want to see fulfilled. Yes, that's a very good question. That if you don't have coaches that are trained locally, then how do you expect to qualify to the World Cup? I think, again, we need to be very honest in assessing ourselves. I think it takes a lot of resources to be able to establish coaching schools. But what I need to say at this stage in time, maybe what we need to focus more is to ensure that we send most of our coaches abroad on training at this juncture, whilst we are developing our own institutions. I think the process they have in selecting coaches and putting the technical team together, I think is a very fair process. I think ZIFA has lately adopted a process where they have some senior advisors that meet together to select who's going to be the coach. I think that's a more transparent process. But again, things need to be reviewed and to see what works, comparing with other countries that have been successful. Well, I'm not quite sure whether it's done way ahead, the election process is done way ahead in time. But what I can necessarily say is that I think we need, to some extent, to review our governance in football and review also how we regulate a lot of things, and review also the methods that we use to appoint the football governors that effectively elect the administrators. So I think there's need to review our current structures. I think we failed to make it to the World Cup necessarily because of incompetence in football administration, which we still have a lot of problems to go ahead. We have not been able to develop our players, especially the junior football development. There's been a depth of junior football development over the last 15 years, and I think it has only started to be revived now. And I think also the third thing that has affected our qualification for the World Cup is also the limitations of spaces allocated to African countries. Africa is a huge continent. You know, we've got a continent of about 53, 54 countries, and only up to quite recently, only 5 countries could only qualify for the World Cup. So that's also quite unfair when you're looking at it from a demographic point of view. Yes, I think that has been taken up by CAF to the FIFA Congress, and I'm told that at the next World Cup, Africa will have an increased slot of teams. I think our slot is going to be increased from currently 6, I think, to 10 at the next World Cup. And I think that will be a big milestone, which could see countries like Zimbabwe, perhaps, hopefully, qualifying for the World Cup. Well, my advice to the national team coach would be that play attacking football. Football has changed now, and the best way of defending is to attack. Prepare our team mentally and psychologically, especially at the Nations Cup. I think we stand a chance. And I think let them play with a lot of freedom. Get your team relaxed and let them play with composure. And I think if that is adopted, I think we can go a long way at the Nations Cup. The good things that I'm taking away from the homecoming tour is that Zimbabwe is a football-loving nation, and the fans showed us a lot of love. All the stadiums we've played, we've been treated very well. So I'm going to take away with us the love that we've been given, but also I will take away again that there's still a huge work to do with regards to supporting community football development. The schools are under-resourced and under-capacitated. We need to do a lot more to support the marginalized communities to ensure that footballs are distributed, football kits are distributed, with a huge amount of requests for support from a lot of community organizations. My advice to the upcoming players is that they need to remain focused, they need to work hard. Football is not a one-off event, it's a process that requires sheer hard work and determination to prepare physically and to continue to work. So they need to persevere. I think we have failed to export a lot of players in the last few years, actually attributed to the issues of brain drain, especially of the local talent with South Africa, that a lot of our players, before they are fully developed, they go into South Africa. And then when they go to South African clubs, they are not nurtured very well or prepared to go into Europe. They just stay there and stagnate. So this is why I have passion for diaspora, that our opportunities of exporting more talent into Europe maybe should come from the diaspora, and we've actually seen it happening. I think there's still an issue with regards to our culture, our Zimbabwean parents and community accepting that football is now a profession that is as good. It needs more dedication, like the same as you encourage your children to study, that when they are players, you should also encourage them to play and to be committed religiously. I think the culture still focuses more on education rather than sport. But I think with more education, parents will be able to understand that football is a huge business now, that if your son is a talented footballer, you need to support him as good as you would support him with education. The feedback is that the tour was a success. The majority of the parents and the players are all happy, and they want the tour to happen again. Some were even saying, can we have it again in December? So this shows that it has touched a lot of people and touched the right nerve, but we are confident with their support that we will try and make it an annual event. So everyone has been very supportive. We have had a lot of good reception and response from the government towards the initiative. I'm sure you are aware that we were given a reception with the Vice President, which was very overwhelming for us as the organizers and for the players. All the key stakeholders, the Minister of Sports, Sports and Recreation Commission, ZIFA, PSL, they've responded very well with us. I've had meetings with each organization, just doing a debrief on the tour. So we have received a lot of good support from the government and all the key sporting bodies. Overall, it's difficult for me to comment on how prepared are we with regards to sports medicine or sports physios. But I think the two guys that worked with us during the tour demonstrated to me that there's a lot of potential and quality personnel with regards to medics and physios. The guys that worked with our players did a tremendous job, and my players confirmed that they were very professional in their approach and knowledgeable as well. maybe get prepared. In the next tour, what we might want to change is to ensure that we prepare in advance. We get all our fixtures confirmed well in advance so that the fans are aware of where and when we are playing so that they can come and support us. We had a lot of feedback of fans saying that we would have loved to come and support you, but we were not aware that you are playing, especially our early kickoffs that we did. So I think in future, we want to have our own main games rather than play as curtain raisers. Our future plans is that, number one, we want to make sure that this tour happens regularly every year. And we are making the necessary arrangements now. We have already started planning for the 2020 tour, which we want again to be a milestone. But I think we have plans to ensure that this program becomes exciting and it helps to market the country, to rebrand Zimbabwe, and it helps to also show and strengthen the re-engagement agenda which the government has adopted. So we intend, as we progress, to maybe build up to these tours turning up into an international football tournament where we invite a local-based national team, the diaspora one team from Africa, one team from South America, another team from Asia, and another team from Europe to come and play together as an international football tournament. We believe that that will be a very good approach that will help to promote our country, to promote our tourism, and also to promote business and investment in Zimbabwe. So we want this to translate into the bigger picture of supporting the national vision of 2030. Last words is that I just want to say thank you to everyone who supported this initiative. Thank you to our sponsors that came on board to support us. Thank you to all the crew, the media crew, the medics, the technical department, my coaches, the parents, the players, and everyone that prioritized us. We are so happy that the tour has been a success and an eye-opener. So we are so grateful for the support we got from the country. And we just want to say to the embassy, thank you again so much for planning this tour with us. ZTA, thank you again for being there for us. And everyone that has supported us on this tour, we are so grateful.